Alrighty, I think we are live. Just gonna see if we have some people coming in. Keep this in my comment section. Perfect. All right. All right. Welcome. Good day, everyone. Welcome to today's highly anticipated webinar, Zero Trust in Action, a cyber expert's guide to securing modern workspaces. My name is Tasneem Ahmed, and I'm thrilled to be your host for today's discussion. As a business development representative at Parallels, I've had the privilege of working with organizations across industries as they navigate the complexities of today's modern IT environments. Today, we're going to talk about something that's on every organization's mind, security. And not just any security, but the transformative model of zero trust. Before diving in, I want to firstly, of course, express my gratitude to all of you for taking your time today, for joining us, whether you're here to learn, validate your strategies, or explore new ideas. I promise you will leave this discussion with some actionable insights. So let's begin by quickly giving you an overview of where we come from, or where I come from as a company, of course, from the Parallels side of things. For those of you who are not familiar with Parallels, a quick introduction. We are basically at the forefront of simplifying application delivery and enabling secure remote access to resources for organizations of all sizes. Our solutions, particularly Parallels Remote Application Server or Parallels Secure Workspace, empowers the IT teams to streamline operations, enhance remote working security, and deliver seamless end user experiences wherever their teams may be working from. We believe in providing secure, flexible, and cost-effective solutions that align in the modern work demands. And today's topic on zero trust perfectly complements that mission. To quickly give you an overview of what the agenda or the snapshot of the agenda really looks like, or things we'll cover today, along with our special guest, of course, that we have in the panel, which I'll quickly introduce in a bit. We'll basically be diving deeper into the introduction side of things of what zero trust really is, how it works, and why it's critical in today's security landscape. We will touch up upon real-world applications and its role in the modern workforce. We'll explore how organizations are putting zero trust into action and what the future really holds for this principle. And I'll also quickly give you an overview of how we are really enabling this principle of zero trust at Parallels, a quick look into our approach and solutions. And of course, towards the end, we'll give you an opportunity to ask our expert anything in regards to this subject and address those questions as well. So please feel free to drop your questions in the comment section or share your thoughts in the chat, and we'll address them as we go towards the end. I hope that sounds fair. Having said that, I'd love to quickly introduce our distinguished guest for today's chat. It's my pleasure to introduce him, Dr. Chase Cunningham, better known in the industry as Dr. Zero Trust. Chase is one of the most respected voices in cybersecurity. With a PhD in computer and information system security, he has been a trusted advisor to countless organizations, guiding them on their journey to implement robust zero trust frameworks. He's also the co-author of an internationally best-selling book, #Hacked2, where he, along with a great panel of experts, explore the ever-evolving world of cybersecurity threats. Also, as you can see, he's a very cool podcaster with an interesting channel on Spotify that you should really check out. So Chase, it's really an honor to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me on here. I appreciate it. That's one of my favorite pictures from when I was doing stuff at the Pentagon.
Yeah, looks like it. But yeah, tell me about this picture. Is it for an event or was it a workshop that you did?
Yeah, that's for a workshop I did when we were doing zero trust strategy with the CIO for the US DoD. This was a little while ago, but anytime you see the podium at the Pentagon, if there's no one around, you run up and take a picture. So that's what I did.
Cool. How long ago was this, may I ask?
This one was 2019, so it's about 5 years old by now, but I still like it. So
got it. No, it's an interesting time because the reason I see things after and before 2019 is basically, of course, the entire COVID era. I know it's pretty much long gone now, the entire COVID era, but it's an interesting phase where actual cybersecurity measures were really being considered.
Yeah,
Um,
good
and
point.
yeah, the first thing that I really want to dive deeper into before we actually get into these things is basically because I started actually working, I would say, full time in the year 2019. So it was just after COVID. So yeah, companies were already involved in implementing these kind of measures. Whereas I know you've been on the field for quite some time now, so you have seen the ever evolving need and how change the entire principle of incorporating such principles, like for example of zero trust and other cybersecurity measures, have been as well. So the first question I really want to talk about, Chase, is the fact that what for you is zero trust, and has this term evolved in the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I mean, zero trust as a concept is not what you would consider to be brand new. I mean, you probably noticed it more recently in the past few years because of the growth and the marketing and that type of thing. I mean, it's even happening now in Australia at the country level. There's people working on ZT for the UK government as well. So it's been growing. But the truth of the matter is, zero trust goes back to a very basic principle that the majority of us live in. We just don't really recognize it. If you kind of think about your actual interactions, just consider someone showing up to your house to say fix, I don't know, a plumbing leak, right? So imagine there's two scenarios. One scenario is you have placed a call, you have gotten a hold of a plumber. They've said that they're going to send someone at a certain day and time. They show up, you go to the door, you greet them, you allow them to verify who they are, and then you let them come in to do their work. And at the end of that time, you politely show them the door and have them leave, and then call their boss and say they did a great job and pay the bill. That's actually what a zero trust sort of instantiation looks like, right? I know that this was coming. I set it up. I allowed it to occur. I verified the transaction. I let them do their thing. And then at the end of the session, I send them on their way. And then I make sure that that session is terminated. That's what we want to live in. Whereas the other scenario is I have a plumbing problem or an issue, and someone miraculously shows up at my door and they just let themselves in and walk and figure out where this leak is in my house by kind of showing themselves around. And then they maybe fix the leak, maybe they do something else. And then I never know if they left. That's not how we want to operate in the real world, because that's risky. I mean, that person could be hiding in your closet planning to murder you or something. So you don't want to live that way. You don't do that in a digital space. But the fundamental issue that we've built into digital systems, and it wasn't for malicious purposes, but we built it here because it was just the nature of how we wanted things to work, was for open sharing and default access and those types of interactions. That's all well and good until you're operating in a potentially hazardous environment, which is where cyber is. So when we're thinking about ZT, and people kind of get wrapped up around this a lot, they'll go and kind of bristle at the fact we're talking about zero trust. You live in a zero trust sort of approach to the world. Just be honest with yourself about that, especially if you have kids, which I do. So why not do that in a digital space? And this is not about not trusting your people or having some sort of malevolent thinking towards your employees. This is about understanding what causes compromise and then putting controls in place that will negate that compromise. That's it.
Yep. No, yeah, exactly. That's a very interesting way of looking at it. And yeah, I think it's all about accessibility, right? You have control. I mean, you can't always have control on who is accessing what. So yeah, why not just have that zero trust? Um, but in regards to the traditional cybersecurity approaches, I'm sure that, yeah, zero trust is an umbrella term of a majority of many other things that are existent in the world of cybersecurity. Could you tell me how this principle in itself differs from the traditional security approaches that already exist?
I mean, your traditional security approach is the perimeter-based model, and the perimeter-based model
Mhm.
we've known. I always ask people, like, do you want to guess when the first time the perimeter-based model of cybersecurity failed? And they would say, oh, well, it was, I don't know, Operation Aurora or whatever else. No, that we knew that this was going to fail all the way back to the fall of the city of Troy, which is in antiquity, right? Thousands of years ago. I mean, think about what happened in Troy. You had stuff on the beach. You had something outside the wall. People went, transitioned through the wall, poked a hole in the firewall, if you will, grabbed the thing, brought it in, let it sit there, and then bad guys deployed out from inside it, established a beachhead, and went forward and did
Mhm.
bad things. So we've known for a long time that that was going to fail. We just digitized it and kind of hoped that it didn't go to the scale that it is now. So we've categorically understood that as a market we should move away from that perimeter based model of security. We need to get to this new one. And the pillar based approach, when I was at Forrester and kind of worked to put all this in play, the whole goal was to say, how do we map out the things that are necessary in a digital system and then apply zero trust concepts to each of those individually? Because this market is dynamic and it is built up
Mhm.
around particular controls and capabilities that have to work. So some stuff might be really great at identity, but it doesn't do very well at, I don't know, visibility analytics. And some stuff might be well suited for data security, but it doesn't do well at the device level. So by putting a framework together, we were able to break down what the market is and assign those pillar capabilities to different capabilities in the market, and that clarified the space for everybody. So when people look at this, I think the thing is there is no think about it like a dinner menu at a restaurant. You don't have to have everything. You can have pieces of this pie, but it's going to be pieces of the pie that you need for your business and your organization. There's no
Right.
requirement from anyone, as far as I'm aware, that says you must solve for all of these things right now at this time and do it all at once. That's not smart. Really pick and pull and build it to your needs. And there is a maturity curve here too. So solve simple problems first, solve dynamic, very comprehensive problems later. So think about that when you're really thinking about where we are now and then the sort of architecture and the framework that's been created. This is meant as a guide. Even if you look at NIST
Mhm.
800-207, people will get wrapped up around like that is the Bible for zero trust.
Mhm.
There's no Bible. Those just guides. It's literally called a reference architecture, which means you refer to it and build your stuff based off of that reference. So just keep that in mind. Don't get so wrapped up in like there is a prescriptive model here. There's not.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in terms of how you actually look at it. So it's not like something that you can just adopt in a day or a week. It's something that is a process of its own, and it's all about priority. What you want to prioritize in terms of your security. But is there a way you look at it, Chase? I mean, how do you prioritize it? I mean, is that something that a CISO of a particular organization would tell you, or is that something that you visualize on your own?
So what I really try
Mhm.
and focus on and tell people is think about it from the adversary's perspective, not from the defender's perspective, because
Mhm.
where we go wrong is we try and sort of build this perfect infrastructure where compromise is never going to happen, whatever. That's not correct. A compromise is a given, like it's going to occur. But if you really accept that that is what's going to happen, then you apply controls where the adversary lives first. And I think that that really applies in pushing things out to the edge of the infrastructure, which is counter to the original ZT model. So the original ZT model was data, 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 and then work your way outward, whatever else, which makes a lot of sense. However, having been a red teamer and a defender, it's really hard to do that. But you can still apply zero trust principles outward and then keep it secure from there. And ultimately, you'll work towards the core of the infrastructure later. So I think that that's where there's a bit of a misconception. And again, this is all based on your strategy. Like you can modify this based on your particular needs. But if you also look at the identity curve here, the maturity curve, you'll see things that are simple to take care of first. And most of the simple things occur out towards the edge of the infrastructure: identity and access management, device stuff, users on the internet, crappy passwords, whatever. All of those things are solvable problems that exist outbound of the network, not inside of the network.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I know. Thanks for shining some light on that aspect as well. But yeah, I mean, you've been on this field for quite some time now, Chase. So something that I'm really curious to know is how has this term evolved? Because I mean, as you said it yourself, zero trust has been a term that is not a buzzword anymore. It's been out there for some time now. But in regards to how people look at it right now, and in regards to how people looked at it, maybe let's say before the so-called COVID era, let's say, is there a big difference, Chase, or is that something that we've just learned from our mistakes and adopted?
I mean, the COVID era was good for proving that businesses could move towards this model and still be operational and grow and whatnot and
Mhm.
do well. So you've got all these businesses that have moved towards a, I don't know if now it's like kind of remote by default, but most businesses have some sort of remote-ish work
Mhm.
policy. I mean, even if they're making you come back to the office, it's usually not 5 days a week, it's three. But
Mhm.
if that's going to be how your business is going to operate, and there's a whole lot of benefits there, you had better make sure that you can operate in this sort of cafe model style of internet access and usage. And the way that you do that is by aligning towards the principles of ZT because of
Mhm.
the nature of where compromises occur. And you want to treat your users and their home network or their mobile environment as an extension of your infrastructure. So ZT, just by the, I guess, nature of the way the business has moved during and after COVID and where we are now, has become the kind of de facto standard for what makes the most sense in the long haul view of where businesses are going to go. And I mean, I like these stats because I think these speak to where ZT controls need to go. You know, it's not, you don't see things on here about sort of
Mhm.
crazy reconfiguring of network infrastructure and super amazing 0 days and whatever. I mean, the majority of the stuff is relatively solvable, and it also exists on the kind of edges of your infrastructure. So why would you begin with applying controls anywhere else?
Yeah, I agree. And in regards to how organizations approach this, do you think that has changed? Because okay, yeah, the need is real right now because of how easy accessibility has become. But I mean, in regards to how you worked with companies, is there a transition that you had to do yourselves as a, I mean, as an advocate for such a technology, and of course, being on the field for so long, was there a learning curve for you as well?
I think the learning curve for me was actually that we needed to work our way up the food chain in the corporate system towards the C-suite people and board members that were not cyber. I mean, it's
Mhm.
interesting
Yeah.
because for the longest time we all tried to kind of beat down the CISO's door and get it in front of the CISO. CISOs get it, like they understand why this is needed and they're trying to do it. They're there, but the reality of it is CISOs, no matter who they are or where they are, I have yet to find one, are not the ultimate arbiter in making that decision. They influence, they guide, they lead, but at the end of the day, it's a CIO, CEO, or board level decision, especially if you're talking enterprise. What I had to learn, a lot of other ZT kind of proponents had to learn, was how to speak board, how to speak
Mhm.
CEO, and move it up that food chain, because that's who we actually need to focus on and enable, because this is a business decision. This is not necessarily a cybersecurity decision. That decision's been made. Like I say, CISOs get it.
Mhm.
So being able to speak at that different level and talk about ease of use and budgeting and growth and business impact and those things has made a big difference.
Yeah, that's true. I completely agree on that aspect as well. I think yeah, it's the technology. I mean, the people who are well versed in technology, which will advocate for it, but it will be the business decision at the end of the day. But yeah, I can. I mean, just before I really move on into some real life applications, Chase, just out of curiosity, because I know in the past there were instances where companies waited for something, for an incident to happen before they can actually take these things seriously. Do you think that has also shifted with time? That now it is a priority before even an organization's, goes beyond, like, let's say 30, 40 employees, they actually have these kind of things implemented. Do you already see that shift?
Yeah, the requirement that's coming from a lot of different governments,
Yeah.
including, like I said, Australia, the UK, seeing it in APAC as well. I was in Taiwan doing zero trust work, so the governments are driving a lot of that, and the fact that they are putting requirements in place along with initiatives that are going to drive adoption means that it's no longer just one of those things of kind of hope and wait and see what happens. Like, that is not a smart strategy, and you're going to pay for it one way or the other. So I think that that's been really good, is that organizations and leadership globally has finally started to say, okay, cyber is not just a bunch of computer geeks that are freaked out about the sky is falling. It's a real thing. Let's put some requirements in place and drive things. And I mean, the carrot or stick initiative is still there. I think we're seeing a lot more carrot than stick now, which is probably a good thing in the business context, but
Mhm.
it's going to keep coming. if anyone thinks that there's not more cybersecurity controls and requirements along the lines of CT coming your way, you're wrong. It's coming. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah, agreed. I understand that way. But yeah, I mean, in just to dive deeper into the aspect of real life applications, right? I mean, let's talk about the industries that are targeted. So, personally speaking, the way I look at it is okay. There would be priorities that would be based that okay, particular industries will prioritize these elements of cybersecurity in a particular way, whereas others won't. But is it really dependent on that, Chase? Because you, I'm sure, have worked with different companies in different verticals. Is it really dependent on a priority level, or is it just that any company can be a target?
No, any company is a target. I mean, what we don't see on this particular chart, and I'm working on some of the research for
Mhm.
this too, is the major companies, the major government organizations. They've kind of done what they can to make themselves slightly harder targets than they were in the past. And this is an area where the
Mhm.
adversary follows the path of least resistance. So if you follow the last maybe 2 years worth of compromise activity, it's really been vendors, third parties, contractors, relational agreements that have caused compromises. It hasn't been direct targeting of the major companies' infrastructure because that's been hardened. So where they go is they go after the low-hanging fruit, which is the mom and pop shops, the small businesses, those people, and they're working their way through that. And that is not good because collectively that's what makes this whole system work. Is everybody's connected, everybody talks to each other, we do work collaboratively, etc. And that's going to continue to drive issues if people don't address it and get forward on it now. But every business everywhere is a potential target for an adversary, even to the level of an APT. A lot of small businesses would say, oh, why would China care if they can hack me? It's not that they care if they can hack you, it's that you have connections to other stuff that they want.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And yeah, I think it's the way of looking at it, right? It's either you be prepared or just wait for that one bad day.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it's sooner or later the bell tolls for thee, and you just have to be ahead of it, honestly. And it doesn't require people or businesses to have super crazy NSA level security. It just requires you to be better than the next schlub down the road. So if you can do those things, you're making yourself a harder target. Does that mean that compromise never occurs? Absolutely not. But it means that it's not necessarily as easy for the adversary to do things they want to do. And this is a space where those adversarial, folks, they're on a clock as well. They're on a budget. They're on requirements from their higher ups. If you can be a harder target, they'll find someone easier. That's a good thing. Like even if they find someone else, that's a win for you.
It's true. Um, yeah, I'm really curious to really understand in regards to because we've heard enough stories about companies being breached, big companies, good names, but still one bad luck, and they're just a part of such incidents. And I'm sure that you have been part of many organizations, or at least talked to people from different organizations. Uh, are there any highlights that you'd want to kind of share, Chase, in regards to some applications that you saw were very specific or relevant to that time, that or something that you would be very proud of that you've been a part of?
Well, I mean, I think one thing to take away here is that these major organizations, this is proof, literal proof that the budget and the amount of money you throw at something and the compliance requirements do not equal a better security posture. I mean, these companies totaled up have spent billions of dollars on security, and every single one of them have been breached, and all of them were compliant and they were breached. So does that mean that they, failed categorically? No, but it means that they basically relied on kind of the minimum set of standards and throwing a lot of money at the problem, and things still went wrong for them. I would argue that these companies could have done things better if they'd approached it more strategically. But this is armchair quarterbacking, right? We all know that this is that we learn as we grow and we learn as we evolve. They needed to change their approach. The one that stands out to me is kind of the most well put together architecture from a ZT related incident was Google moving into their what they call Beyond Corp since the Operation Aurora failure. And what's interesting there is Google's got nearly 200,000 employees globally since they moved towards Beyond Corp model, which is their zero trust instantiation. you have not seen a Google corporate security failure. You have not seen them in the news. So if Google can do it at that scope and scale, anybody can. And that doesn't mean you have to have Google money, but you just have to follow the same approach and principles. And I think that for me, that's one that really stood out, is to be able to reference, like, if they can do it, so can everyone else. Because there's a big moving target there, a lot of interesting stuff, definitely attacked all the time, every day, but they continue to do well.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's a great example. But Chase, out of curiosity, because you also, I think there's a lot of communication goes, particularly in your field, where you have to talk to different stakeholders, sometimes technical people, sometimes the commercial people. Which industry do you think is the easiest to communicate these elements of importance of cybersecurity, particularly in the world of zero trust?
I think the one that stands out most currently is finance is doing pretty well. People don't give them enough credit, and that's the part of the reason they're doing as well as they are, is because they've been so attacked for the course of the last X number of years. Government is doing as well as it can. The US DoD is driving a lot of ZT adoption. So I think there are signs that it works well. The ones where you kind of, in my experience, have run into issues of people being hesitant to adopt security controls is typically healthcare, and there's reasons there, right? Their job is to save lives. They're not technologists by trade, so it's kind of hard to get them, sometimes to engage in, this is the right strategic approach to the problem.
Got it. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting sector as well, the financial world, especially because of how the financial services and the fintech world itself is growing together. And yeah, that how they grow, it also opens up many opportunities for these kind of incidents, right? But yeah, in regards to actually looking at the challenges, right? Because of course, every transformative framework comes with challenges. In regards to, especially the fact that zero trust in itself is not a new term, it's been out there for so long. In today's day and age, what are the actual obstacles that organizations are still facing that they're not able to really leverage this to its full extent?
The biggest one is that a lot of CISOs did the best they could, and they got a lot of budget, and they built their systems over the course of the last X number of years. And honestly, if they didn't align to zero trust principles to begin with, they're having to reallocate and kind of build things on the future, which is problematic because they're asking for more budget to continue to do things. And security, by its very nature, is you're always proving a negative, which no one likes to do, right? If I do my job correctly, nothing happened, and everybody's like, great, well, what the heck does that mean? So being able to have an approach where, and that's why I say, like, for myself and for other people I know, we had to adopt and change our approach around business side. If you are not enabling business conversations and you're not talking about budget and those types of things, your message is going to fall on deaf ears. And even if zero trust is the perfect instantiation of strategy, if you're not talking the right terms, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. So I think that that's the one that stands out most. The other side of it that still kind of confounds me is that we, as a market, rely too much on humans rather than technology. Like, we're in a technology space, but people still rely on humans. I don't think that you should be relying on people not to be people. So put technology in front of people that can control their interaction with malicious content. And if you do that, you're doing things at a better scale. The proof is in the pudding. If you talk to people and they say, oh, we have a 97% phishing click rate or whatever else, great. You still have 3% of your organization that will click a link. Why not do something that technically controls those people? Because they're going to be the people that will cause you compromise.
Agreed. I think that's a very interesting way of putting it. Why not put in the technology itself in front of the people? So yeah, as you said, people are people at the end of the day. We're bound to make mistakes, or also do things which are very humane at the end of the day. But in regards to, because I'm sure that there are a lot of technical people watching us from the audience side today, especially who are experts or at least diving into the world of cybersecurity, working in their organizations. So in regards to practical steps that companies can take, Chase, from transitioning from a traditional perimeter-based security model to a much more of a zero trust based robust framework, what would be the practical steps you could actually think of?
I mean, these are just these are my opinion, right? So take
Yeah.
everything with a grain of salt. And again, everything is
Mhm.
your strategy. But for me, I say take care of identity and access management first because people use crappy passwords and everything has to be accessed. So why not have a solid approach there? MFA, those types of things, passwordless if you could get to it, etc. I think the next step really is around taking care of the devices that people are using and making
Yeah.
sure that you have good controls over that. And the thing that ties in and bridges the gap, in my opinion, between identities, devices, and network is really taking things like browser isolation and being able to put that in front of those assets. And people should also understand you can use BI in front of machines as well. Like if you're in a hospital, a lot of those things access the internet via the browser. Why not put controls there as well? And then working forward from that, I think you start getting into things like microsegmentation of the network, application control issues and code. And then finally, at the end of it, you're really at that data level. So, the other thing that people could take away is if you solve the stuff that I talked about first, you're probably further along in your ZT journey than you give yourself credit for, which is
Mhm.
great. Now begin continuing to apply those same concepts to the area where you're currently at. This is a marathon, not a sprint.
Agreed. I think that's a very good way of looking at it. Thanks for that. Um, but yeah, okay. Now that we actually know what the actual present context is, where we actually come from in regards to this principle as a whole, the challenges as well. But what do you think the future holds, Chase? I'm sure you've done your own research. You've seen how this has grown. But what do you think is the future with technologies like AI already out there? There's so much influence in accessibility, even. Is it going to be much more of a challenging period, or will the technology just make it easier for us to implement zero trust in our organizations?
I mean, the problem is that we, as the quote good guys, don't own the sort of capabilities specific around quote AI. Like the bad guys can use it as well. And I think I saw a stat recently that said that phishing attempts have grown by 4,000% over the course of the last year. So it's because AI and those types of things have democratized the ability to create code and phishing pages and all those things. So there's every technology has a dual-edged sword. You're going to see more from the adversary as you're going to see from the good guy. I think that where we get into the benefit side of this is that we can apply ZT concepts and principles to the new stuff that's coming our way and continue to be accurate. Like that's what a really good strategy is it does evolve, it does change over time. So there's some good that comes out of that. You should be able to leverage the policy engine side of ZT with these machine learning types of applications to give you better capability control and context. And that I'm starting to see in the market. Like there are some really interesting and innovative approaches to being able to take care of that and have it be accurate on its own. Like learning models are great,
Uh-huh.
policy engines are great, and AI and whatever reality we're dealing with is viable for those types of solutions.
No, I agree. And in regards to trends that organizations could already see, because okay, the technology is already evolving, but I know you already mentioned this on what could be the practical steps, but in regards to trends that organizations and companies, especially mid to smaller companies, should really look out for to ensure their strategies remain future proof, or would there be any trends that you could actually just pick out and talk about,
I
Chase?
mean, I think the trends that are most applicable are looking at where you continue to see the fail points. I mean, I really rely heavily on the Mandiant M-Trends report and the Verizon DBIR. I use those as kind of statistical bases for where we have issues. And if you're looking at that,
Mhm.
you'll notice it's still the typical avenue of compromise is users on the internet, bad passwords, and people doing stuff that they shouldn't do leverage these type of capabilities to get in there and work at that scale. And in a perfect world, security is unbeknown to the user. They just don't know that they're actually operating in a secure model, and unless something goes awry, and then it stops them from being impacted. And that's where you want to get to in a really good security model, zero trust or not. People are secure by the way that they operate, and it's beneficial for them. It's not a hindrance, and that's where we're going to get as these policy models and capabilities become really refined by those back-end optimization technologies.
Got it. Got it. And would there be any technology, for example, the only reason I wanted to ask you is because I think this example yeah, personally, when you talk about VPNs, for example, at one point, VPNs were the state of the art technology just to ensure zero trust. But now, of course, I mean, they're not no longer the safest in terms of, completely ensuring remote access security. So, are there technologies that might outgrow Chase that we might have to really move forward from or transition from to really keep ourselves intact?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be stuff we're going to age into and stuff we're going to age
Mhm.
out of. So it kind of remains to be seen where that goes. But I think where you're going to get to is that a lot of people are going to realize they don't need all the endpoint capabilities that they're typically offered. Like it's going to be where you can operate in kind of these VDI models, and folks are going to be able to operate in a secure workspace along those lines. Most people in most enterprises don't need all the crazy cool things that computers can do, and those are just risks. So
Mhm.
why aren't you removing those risks? And that's what you're going to kind of evolve towards, I think, is that we're going to almost operate in the future space on a thin client model for everybody on the internet, other than developers and people that really need all that capacity.
Got it. Got it. So yeah, from what I've heard and understood, there's a lot of room for improvement, and there's a lot of room for technologies to really build this robust framework. But there's also a lot of things that we need to really grow from, rather than really sticking to those traditional approaches. And yeah, stay ahead of the curve. I think that's the approach that organizations should really look at, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yep, I mean that's about as cut and dry as it can be, and the truth of the matter is that security strategy is about your organization, but there are kind of best practices that we all know about, and there are intelligent approaches to the problem that we're all aware of. That is where you should apply those controls. Otherwise, you're not really attacking the problem; you're attacking kind of the approach, and the approach is pretty clear.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, it also makes sense, right? Because I've been, yeah, been a part of companies where they've used multiple technologies. I know, at the end of the day, of course, it's basically working with different vendors, but at the same time, I feel that they might even complicate that. When you can use a solution that could, for example, have an inbuilt MFA. Let's just say that, rather than having, okay, I'm going to have an MFA, and then I'm going to have a password manager, and then I'm going to have a different solution. Do you think sometimes we as people, because yeah, it's sometimes we like to work with a lot of different technologies, so that also comes from there, but it's also like we sometimes overcomplicate things for ourselves. Do you think that is something that you've seen in many companies that you've worked with?
Oh yeah, all the time, and especially since we have the life cycle of leadership in cyber is pretty short. I mean, most
Yeah.
CISOs are only in their job for a couple of years if they're lucky. So you keep getting this kind of roll on and new people and new tech and new problems and etc. So I mean, and even if you think about it, like I consider myself a good example of this. Like I love tech, so anytime I see something new and interesting, I typically go get it, and then I wind up with a whole bunch of stuff that I don't need or use, and I need to get rid of it over the course of the next year. So I mean, it's really one of those things where we can be our own worst enemy because we are technologists. We like technology, and everything is available to you now. So you just keep buying and trying and buying and trying. And that is not a good approach overall strategically to the problem space.
Got it, got it. But yeah, I think it's all about the core competence of that particular technology, sticking to that. Because yeah, sometimes you can't get all of the things in one cup, right? Yeah, so you have to be smart there as well. And interesting, yeah. Just before I really start talking about a parallel side of things, Chase, because I'm really enjoying this conversation. What I really want to know is, are there interesting mistakes that you've learned from that? Really you want to carry for the coming years, even working with different companies. Some mistakes that you learned from in the past.
Yeah, so the biggest one is going too big too fast. I was doing a workshop for Zero Trust with a large bank, and they said that their small level of rollout was going to be 5,000 users, and it's like that's way too big. I mean, they're a huge company, but we wound up starting with 50. Okay, so if you can get 50 right, you can get 100 right. You can get 100 right, you can get 500 right, and you grow from there. So be very small, very tactical. Try and make sure everything's good at small levels and roll your way up from there. It's kind of funny because we have this thinking about technology and understanding, and that's going to operate at scale, which it will. but it still is not a good idea to just roll it out writ large and see what happens. You got to be tactical about that. And then the other thing is just continually thinking about where you might have a fail point. I think any organization that does not engage in a red team op will never know how they're going to fare when things actually do go awry. So no matter where an organization is at, for me, when I do engagements, the first thing I say is, let's red team this. And if they're not willing to red team it, then it's basically pointless for me to be there. If your goal is to survive in a fight, you need to be in a fight. And the only way to do that is a red team, not a pen test, a red team op.
Team off. No, that's a fair point. Interesting. And I'm sure, working in this field, you might have worked with different technologies, different vendors, and I know you have your own perceptions towards it, because I'm sure you see it in a much more broader light than just in a commercial perspective. You see it in a light where what is important, what is not, what is just, what is basically, pardon my language, but bullshitting stuff. But yeah, I think that's what we need to really learn from is basically the fact that, what is important to you, what is the priority, and really take it on from there. Oh, that's interesting, Chase. Thank you for that. But just to give an insight in regards to how we are really doing this, because again, we are also learning and evolving our technology to enable the right remote access security for our organizations or the organizations we are working with. But at Parallels, just to give an insight to the audience that's with us here today, we have a wide range of solutions, whether it be in the desktop space, web apps, or the cloud space. You might have heard of our legacy product, Parallels Desktop. But yeah, with our solutions like Parallels Secure Workspace, which was previously Avingu, and Parallels Remote Access or Remote Application Server, we are simplifying on-prem or hybrid workspace infrastructures with a secure and streamlined access for companies' resources by allowing the team to work from anywhere around the world. Including technologies which are very recent, like as you mentioned, remote browser isolation. We have something called Parallels browser isolation. Again, the idea is giving a granular access for the users, for the admins, to understand what is required for the end users to use, particularly in the web-based or the web apps perspective, especially because everything is being SaaSified at this point. Everyone wants to go to the cloud. Everyone wants web apps. And I think that's where security is required the most. And that is what we are trying to enable with our solutions here at Parallels. But yeah, of course, later on to that. And thanks a lot for this, Chase. But again, I'd love to address some audience question answers. I don't know if we have any. But yeah, I think this would just give some room for the audience that is already here. Guys, Chase is our expert, so please feel free to ask any questions. I'm sure that might come out later on after this webinar is already out there. I mean, we'll try to address them with Chase's help, of course. But yeah, if there are any questions, guys, would love to address them right now. Let's just give a minute. Yeah, I think there are no questions. That's what I see from our moderators as well. But either ways, Chase, I feel really refreshed. Personally speaking, again, although I come from an engineering background, I did mechanical engineering in my background. But again, this chat with you really helped me understand, zero trust at a better element, because particularly whatever cybersecurity related education I've had is on the work field, particularly in the last 3 to 4 years that I've been on the field, working with different companies and in this space as well. And again, people like you are what really helped me grow as well, helped me understand the technology better, helped me do my job better. So thank you for this lovely chat.
No, thanks for having me. Yeah, this is fun, and I hope your folks get some value out of this. And the approach Parallels is taking maps to zero trust strategically. So it's not, I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying, like, if you're trying to solve a problem, I would give Parallels a fair shake.
Thank you for that, Chase. But yeah, let's stay in touch. I'm gonna check out more of your Spotify podcasts, and of course, learn a lot more in that process. But thank you so much, Chase, for being here. And yeah, hope to chat again sometime soon.
Thank you, and thank the Parallels team.
Pleasure. Thank you. I'm just gonna stop sharing right here.